Greetings, fellow scribes! Welcome back to the archive. This week I continue my series on the Worlds of AD&D 2nd Edition by talking about Birthright. See, in the early to mid-90s, TSR was in this unique state. They were the undisputed kings of the RPG market. While there were other games out there, they really had no competitors. So, when you're big, you get to try and experiment with new things. So, during this time, they threw out a bunch of high-concept worlds. Spelljammer, Planescape, Council of Worms, Birthright. Birthright was a unique concept of a game because its concept was, so, you the player, yes you, do you want to play a king? Do you want to have rules for how to play a king? Do you want to draw power from the land itself and be able to do cool stuff? This is the setting for you. So, let's just sit back, relax, and enjoy as I talk about the Birthright campaign setting. The setting of Birthright is on one continent, the continent of Cerelia. Now, the basic backstory is, once there was a sets of kingdoms here, people here. But humans fled over this land bridge that connected Cerelia to another continent. And as they came into Cerelia, they conquered the natives. They conquered, enslaved, etc., the people who had been in Cerelia before them. They came over the land bridge fleeing from the forces of evil, a force they called the Shadow. And of course, eventually, like any force of evil, one of the gods of the Shadow found them, followed them over the land bridge, and realized it couldn't conquer them directly. So it went to the elves, whispered to them, convinced them that it could empower them to get revenge for being driven into the woods. It went to this one tribe of the invading humans, the ones who came to Cerelia, and went, you don't remember what I was. I can help you gain strength, prove yourselves to the rest of the world, the rest of your sibling tribes, and protect yourselves from these goblinoids that you deal with on a constant basis. And it did things like that. And it swayed an army to its side. And a war was fought. And this was a back and forth war until a final battle was fought. The gods of the human tribes got them to make a stand at this mountain, Mount Desamar. And you had the mass of humanity here, the human armies of good. You had the forces of Askai under him, the forces of evil, and this epic clash. And for a time, humanity, the humans were losing, and then the elves turned side, realizing finally they had been deceived. But even that was not enough. It was just prolonging the inevitable. And the gods of the humans began empowering them, because the gods had come onto the battlefield themselves. They were empowering their champions, empowering the humans fighting for them. And as the battle raged, something happened. What it was, no one's actually sure. But something happened, and all the gods exploded. Mount Dasamar was reduced to nothing. The land bridge that was still there was destroyed and turned into straits. But something else happened. First, those humans who most closely resembled the deities, who had the strongest inherent philosophical, emotional, etc. attachment to them, were elevated to godhood. But the humans that were being empowered, the elves that were being empowered, dwarves that were being empowered, the goblins, the Orogs, everything that was being empowered by deities, still had a shard of that power coursing into them. They began being called alternately Scions and Blooded. For the forces of evil, they were called first Abominations. Then the elves gave them a name, the Onshalen, and that is the preferred name for these entities. Only the uneducated call them abominations. The studious, the scholars, the kings and regents call them the Onshalen. But these touches of divine energy, divine power, were passed on. When they had children, this power passed on to them. And it would flow like that. And that created the kingdoms. Every kingdom, every province, every church, every holding is run by one of the blooded. Commoners, unblooded people, do not have authority. The blooded, the scions, they are the ones who rule men, who speak at the churches, who run the thieves' guilds, who run the merchants' guilds, who run the bardic colleges. And that is part of what goes on in the setting. For you see, this spark of energy, first off, you can amplify it by carefully waged campaigns, by perfecting skills, by killing other blooded individuals and stealing a fraction of the power that was in them. And both sides know of this. And both sides wage these wars. Because, of course, if I have just a mere province and I kill several other scions, several other blooded regents, I can increase my power and then go from just a small area of rule to a larger area of rule. And then I can put my own people into those positions. And that is very much how things flowed. Because this is not a game of epic quests and things like that, although that is potentially part of it. This is a game of rulership. Not leadership, rulership. And there are a number of specific rules set up to enforce this belief system, enforce this setting conceit into the game. When you talk about the rules, the first thing you have to look at is character creation. And for the most part, character creation was the same for Birthright as it was for standard AD&D 2e, with a couple notable exceptions. First, this is the only setting where dwarves don't get a charisma penalty. In this world, instead of +1 constitution, -1 charisma, dwarves got a +2 constitution, a -2 to dex. Elves got the gray elf stat line. +1 dex, +1 intelligence, -1 constitution, -1 strength. Half-elves got the classic elven stat modifiers. +1 dex, -1 constitution. Halflings, other 2nd edition worlds, was +1 dex, -1 strength. Here, halflings got +1 dex, +1 wisdom, -2 strength. But here is the game changer. Almost every other game world, human rolled ability scores are what they have. Birthright changed that. The 5 tribes of humans all got a +1 to one attribute, a -1 to another. The Anurians got +1 wisdom, -1 dex. The Brecht got +1 dex, -1 wisdom. The Kinasi, +1 intelligence, -1 con. The Rejuric, +1 con, -1 charisma. And the Voss got +1 strength, -1 intelligence. Another interesting change is to Bards. Because you see, in the standard rule set, Bards could only be human or half-elf. However, in this setting, Bards could also be elf. And they divided magic into 3 types. Low magic, which is divination and illusion spells and the 1st and 2nd levels of all other spell groups. true magic, which is everything that's not low magic, and realm magic, which is magic that can only be done by a wizard or priest that is regent of a realm, wherein they use their magical capabilities and connect to the power of the realm, the power of the land, to do massive special effects. And they did some changes. For instance, they created a magician class. This follows the progression of wizard, but can only do low magic. Of course, the wizard can do true magic and low magic. Bards are a very special case. For the most part, bards can do low magic. The spells they can pick up are low magic spells. Except they have knowledge of ancient elven songs that they guard jealously, to the point that they will kill people to protect these. That let them do, in addition to low magic, enchantment charm spells. But for the most part, the bard is, other than that, just the same as a standard bard. Of course, realm magic is one of the big dealios. Only a wizard or priest can do it. And it's complicated. There are systems for it, and there are wizard and priest realm magic spells. One of the wizard spells is a powerful one that can kill hundreds of targets in an enemy army. Realm magic is, of course, done on the realm turn, not on the standard turn. Not on the standard adventuring party section. And that is where things get interesting in this whole setup. You see, there are two levels of play. First off, you have what's called the domain turn. This is where you do all the stuff that affects your kingdom. You have a set number of actions you can do, but this is also where you collect taxes, pay for your mercenaries or armies, pay for your advisors, all that stuff. But this is also where you build holdings, build walls, build fortresses, make edicts, cast realm spells, if you can, declare wars, fight wars, all that stuff. That's all done on the domain turn. A whole sort of higher level of play above what you normally see. And then, of course, you have normal play, where your PCs go out adventuring. Do stuff to make the realm better. Make your realm better, stronger, safer. Some random events from the domain turn can actually require an adventure. Like, goblin raiders in an area. Hey, you could send mercenaries out, or you could go yourself with your band of heroes. And that is another fun aspect. You see, there are multiple ways you can play the game. You could do it as a bunch of, we're blooded, but none of us are a regent. Or we're blooded and we're commoners, none of us is a regent type group. That's a more standard D&D experience. You could do it as one of the PCs is the regent, and the others are his or her advisors. You could do it as we've got one realm, but all of us have sort of overlapping fields, and so we're all technically able to use regent abilities just differently. Or you can do it as a variation of that, of all of us are regents of our own area, but one of us is over all the others. Or you can do it the full political way. Each of us is a regent. We kind of have a detente between each other. We're not going to kill each other. We will be competing for resources during our domain turns. And occasionally, we get together as a group of PCs and go adventuring, but we also conduct diplomacy between each other in PC terms, in adventurer's time, sort of things. And yeah, that's sort of how the mechanics and setup for this all work. Now, there are abilities based on how strong your bloodline is, and there are ways to strengthen your bloodline. But for the most part, it's all random, and you cannot even guarantee getting a power each time your bloodline goes up, though the higher it gets, the more likely you are to get a power, and the more likely you are to get stronger powers. And bloodline powers are fairly significant things. I mean, a minor one is animal empathy, where you get bonuses to dealing with animals. But, these are all various, well, in other editions, in later editions, many of these would be feats, because one of the minor bloodline powers is alertness. So, they're not game-breaking. They're actually fairly simple powers, for the most part. But they create a, look at me, I'm special type thing for the PCs. Because these powers are what separates a blooded PC from a commoner. Oh, there's one other thing I forgot to mention. Bards have an oath of neutrality. A bard can never, ever be a regent. He can be an advisor, and circumstances can thrust him into a temporary leadership role, but a bard can never be a permanent regent. So that's a fun little detail with that. And that's pretty much the discussion for this week on Birthright. This was one of those settings that had a lot of potential and was actually fairly popular among those who played it, who loved it. It took me a long time to track down a box set, in fact. But Birthright is still one of those examples of TSR trying something, not caring whether it succeeded or not. Unfortunately, it didn't get the selling points and profits that would have liked. And so there are those who say Birthright is one of those things that contributed to the financial circumstances that would lead to TSR being bought out by Wizards of the Coast. But, with that said, next week I will talk about the hellish desert world of Athas as I talk about the Dark Sun campaign setting. Until then, I'd like you all to remember to have fun and keep gaming.